Hey everyone, Jeff here, also known as the Revit Kid. I was editing a few more videos and I realized that I didn't make an intro for this one, so here I am. It's the Sunday after Christmas. I hope you guys had an awesome holiday if you celebrate whatever it is that you celebrate. I'm looking forward to a week off here at BIM After Dark Studios. But I did want to record this little intro to sort of set up this video here. Those of you who've been following along know that I not only run this YouTube channel, but also run a blog at therevitkid.com and also a learning community slash social platform called BIM After Dark or the BIM After Dark community. And I get a lot of questions about what an office hour is. So when it comes to the community, there's people who get value from different aspects of it. One is the social aspect, which is being able to ask questions and get feedback from 130 plus members, including myself, sort of immediately without the noise and feedback of regular social media, which is phenomenal. The other piece of it is courses. I have 4 full-length courses there. I'm making more courses and I'm adding content to those courses. Another piece of the sort of value add of this community is the office hours. So to date, the community launched back in April of 2020. And we've had 17, I believe, office hours. So I've tried to do them every other week, so to speak. And basically what those are, they are Zoom calls with me. And so we usually have anywhere from 2 to 6 to 7 people on a Zoom call for an hour with me. And really we're chatting and they're asking me questions. Sometimes we set up the questions ahead of time, etc. And so I know a lot of people find a lot of value in this. I personally find some value in them. Plus I get to meet the members in a more intimate setting as opposed to having a nice happy hour somewhere, because obviously we can't do that with what's going on in the world. So what I wanted to do was actually share here on YouTube and with you what an office hour is like. So this is actually an office hour from back in June, I think. It's a sample of one office hour with 2 topics in it. And what we talked about is curtain panels and curtain systems. And there was a couple questions that a member, Jerry, Jerry, what's up, man? Jerry had a question about. And I think Paul had a question about placeholder links and managing swapping out MEP and site files and all that stuff. So I try to answer them the best I can. I think you guys will find it valuable to not only see the content that we're talking about, but also just to see the format of an office hour. So without further ado, sit back, relax, check out this office hour from back in June or July, and comment, let me know what you guys think. And if you're interested, and this is something that you could see yourself gaining value from, head over to community.bimafterdark.com. If you join up now before the end of the year, you will save 30% off your membership. So check that out. Enjoy the video. You guys are amazing. Happy New Year. Talk to you guys soon.
Opposed to a panel.
Oh man, I haven't done that in a while, but I think there's a way. We'll mess with that one live. Okay. Yeah, no, I had some ideas for curtain walls that I think would be helpful for everyone, especially when it comes to just sort of how I normally would start creating them. So since you asked, I guess we'll start there and then we'll roll into the templates. But let me share my screen. And then share my thing here. And here we go. All right. So normally what you'll see is on a typical template. So I'm gonna, Jerry, do you mind muting yourself just while we chat, because I think there's some noise, and I don't want it to get picked up on the recording while I'm chatting. That's all. Obviously, unmute if you want to talk. So you guys can see my whole screen. So this is a default architecture template. So, normally when you go in here, you kind of have 2 options. You have curtain wall 1, which gives you nothing. So if you go here, it's just a curtain wall system. And then you have, exterior glazing. I wouldn't even touch that. Usually curtain wall 1 or storefront are kind of your 2 starting points that most people will have and use, right? And so when I'm if you notice in my template, let's see if it's even there. So if I start a new project, browse to. Oh, I don't have the 2021 on here. So this is one of the Turner templates that we have, and this was derived from one of my architecture templates from the larger firm I worked for. So it doesn't have everything, but I think it has the starting point that I want to show you guys. But the reality is, what I've found is with curtain walls, you want to build into the system only things that make sense. So usually my curtain walls will have vertical spacing set up. They'll have usually mullions, at least mullion types applied, and a major curtain panel applied. But very rarely, unless you have a building where it's going to be a grid system, or a model where it's going to be a grid system, am I using a horizontal and a vertical system? And the reason being is exactly what you just said, Jerry. So if I go in here and I look at curtain wall 1, no, it's not in this one. Darn. All right, well, that's fine. I'll just build it. So usually what I'll have is, if I go in here, because when you think about it, if you're using a curtain wall, for the most part, it's going to span multiple floors. Even if it doesn't, it's going to probably have a pretty consistent vertical grid, but the horizontal grid is usually the one that isn't necessarily every 5 feet, every 3 feet, something like that. There's usually larger and smaller spaces. So what I usually have built into it is, automatically embed, depending on what you're using, that you want to be there. Your curtain panel, I'll have a major one assigned usually. So if it's going to be glazed, then that's going to be my overall panel. And then joint condition depends on the project. Not defining it's okay, because you can modify it afterwards. And then, like I said, I'll usually have the vertical system somehow set up. So let's say this one's 3 feet. And then to make your life a little easier, if you do have a major mullion system that you want applied, then you do want to define those in the system itself. So if I just say these are using this FCO system, I'll just apply these. Even if you're not using that grid, if you have these applied here, then Revit's going to automatically do it. So with this system now, right, I have my vertical elements set at 3 feet. And then, like you said, I'm going to go in and set up the horizontals manually. And the reason being is, I could do every 10 feet. Maybe I did that as my pattern. And then maybe you have something like this with spandrel and stuff. The problem is, as you start going through it, and this is probably what you realize, is that that horizontal especially varies so much depending on the building and the project, that it just makes sense to me to have that always be its own sort of manually placed object. So when it comes to manipulating them, though, so let me just do that real quick. So let me get rid of this crappy one over here. So when it comes to actually manipulating these, as you mentioned, Jerry, it's a pain in the butt, but you do have a lot of tabbing, right? So the first one, you can see right now it's selecting the whole curtain wall. If I tab, it's selecting the mullion. If I tab again, it gets into the grid. If I tab again, I can get to the panel, right? And so you should 100% be able to select everything. It's just a matter of where you're floating around to select it. Unless you have, actually, I shouldn't say it. So the reason you may not be able to select things is because they're probably pinned. So what I'm saying is, if I was to select, remember I applied a glass panel. So right now all my panels are glass. So regardless of what I do, the panels are going to be glass. But if I want this to be spandrel in here, right, I can go in. I'm going to select across here. I can also, by the way, if I select one of these panels and I right click, I can say select panels along horizontal, which is pretty cool, or vertical, which is kind of cool. Notice how there's little pins. So the reason that's pinned is because it was built into the system. And so I have to use unpin, which is UP on the keyboard, or this little thing right here. And now I can actually modify it, because remember I said by default I want my system to have what's it called, glass as its default. Now the reason, Jerry, you may not be able to select something is because down on the bottom right hand side there's this little area that Revit keeps sneaking little things into, and what it is good because to some extent, depending on the model you're working on, it's nice to have the ability to turn these on and off. But these are actually actual selection sort of settings. So you can see here it says select links. So if I click this button, now there's a red X there, I wouldn't be able to physically select a Revit link, which, as you can imagine, can be helpful if you keep dragging across and selecting things. But you may have pinned elements. So if I say no pinned elements, notice how I can't actually physically select any of these mullions or curtain walls. And so odds are the ones you can't physically select, that's what they are. They're pinned elements, and you have pinned elements, the little X there. Down here you also have select elements by face, which is kind of goofy, but can be helpful. And so if you want, instead of using the edge, you could tab and use the face. But if you've used Revit long enough, you know that edges is kind of what you select by. And then this one is helpful. So drag elements on selection. So I'm sure everyone here has been burned with this. Actually, I have it turned off. So it's been burned like this, right? So I just clicked and dragged. So notice I had it off because that just drives me bonkers. So now I can only click then drag, not click drag. So helpful if you're messing in a model that's a pain in the butt. So I almost always my curtain families almost always will have a vertical grid and not horizontal grid built into the system. If you need to, you can. It doesn't really make a huge difference, but that's going to be the major player in how you set them up. Now, when it comes to using wall types in it, so if I select this guy, I type unpin on my keyboard, and then I pull this down, and let's say I want to use a type 2A 7 something or other. So this is a 7/8. That's kind of a lame one to use. Let me use a thicker one. So let's use a 6-inch metal stud. So for some reason I have a 6-inch metal stud in here. And now I believe location line offset is what you're going to want. So normally, right, you would go into edit type when you use the panels. And so let me back out so everyone can see that. So if I go to edit type in the panels, there's a offset right here. With walls, remember walls have finished face, center line, all that good stuff, right? So you can set how you want it to be adjusted to the center of your wall. So if I do finished face exterior, right, now this thing is aligned to the middle of my curtain wall using the finished face exterior. But if I want to use wall center line, it's there. And then if I want to adjust it, I can go either way. I can go 6 inches, 5 inches, oops, whatever makes sense for you. 5 inches, there we go. So now it's sliding back and forth. All right. So what do you think, Paul? Was that helpful? Or sorry, Jerry actually asked that question. So.
Yeah, actually, I think the pen thing is what got me.
Oh, it gets everyone.
And because when I'm working on a project, I'll toggle that on and off. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I want to be able to select
based on what you're doing, right? And that's what those are there for, right? On the bottom, it's links. Like links is one thing, right? Where if you have a ton of links in a file and you're trying to actually build stuff and not select the links, the imports, that kind of stuff is extremely helpful for sure.
Yeah. And after a while working, I was just, what's going on here? and then I burned myself because I went into the curtain wall family and I changed some things with the type, mm-hmm. and somehow I changed the mullions to none, mm-hmm. and then without knowing it, it deleted all my mullions throughout the project.
Yeah, that's the big difference between a type versus instantly placing them. So that's why I always choose something as a default so that there's mullions there, right? It just because odds are you're going to use, when you're building a curtain wall, you're going to use mullions. And then what's nice about that too is that you can if you need to change them later, you just change the type and it changes your entire project, right? Instead of manually selecting or dealing or manually placing the mullions. So that's how I approach it. And did you see that wall? So that that wall function for offset, does that answer your question there?
It did.
Awesome.
That was very helpful. Yep.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, so that's kind of how I approach them usually. You know, when I'm using, even on like the residential stuff, you know, for the most part, you're almost always going to have a constant vertical, right? Like that to me is always the most consistent piece of using the curtain wall tool. It's the horizontals that are always changing, because you might have like a 3 foot and then a 5 foot space and then a 2 foot space. You know, those are the ones where it makes sense to go through. And I wish there was an easier way. I wish you could do, you know, some sort of a rhythm, like, you know, start at the base and do like 3 5 3 5 3 3, because it is a pain. Like when you do a tall building or something, it's a pain in the butt to click 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 and then copy and move and, you know, manually draw it out. But I mean, that seems to be the only way, I should say. Cool. All right, so that was the little curtain wall thing. I hope that was helpful. I know it helped you, Jared, but hopefully everyone watching later as well, it's helpful. And I think you'll see in my template that's part of the documentation course, I think I may have a curtain wall in there that has that. If not, maybe the newer version has it. But either way, it's as simple as it just showed you. It's a simple curtain wall with applied mullions and applied a vertical spacing, no horizontal spacing. But the key is you notice how I assigned. Let me share one more time. How I, even though I didn't have a spacing for horizontal, I still assigned mullions to horizontal. Because what that does is, now when you place this, right, it's going to do your verticals, right? And if you want these to be centered, you can say, I want this to be centered, I want this to be end, whatever. But now whenever I place a grid line anywhere on that, right, it's going to apply the mullions that I tell it to, because they're horizontal. Makes it much faster to create things.
Yeah, I think that's key. I have to adjust my template to have that.
Yeah, because what you were finding is that when you don't have that, so if I can recreate what you just did. So if I say none here, it may delete them all. There you go. So delete all mullions. Now the mullions are gone. And if you manually place them, even if you do them by grid line, right, they're unpinned elements. So the only way to change them again is to tab select all instances, and then flip the type or something like that. You know what I mean? That's the only way to physically change them, because they're placed almost like an instance. I'll get back to this. Here we go. All right. Cool. Little curtain wall tips. Stop sharing the screen. All right.
I tell you what, curtain walls are extremely powerful.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. One of the things that I tell people, whenever I get an argument, which I don't really get in these arguments anymore because I don't bother, but you know, every once in a while you have a discussion about like a SketchUp user or something, and how it's, you know, oh, but I'm so much faster to model something in SketchUp, right? And so the first thing I talk about is the curtain wall tool. You tell me how you're going to make a curtain wall system as fast as I can right now in SketchUp, because it doesn't exist. It's just the kit of parts and component piece of it is just so powerful for so many different things. You know what I mean? Like you've seen some of the stuff that I had with, like, you know, slat walls, and you know, we use them for construction fencing. We use them for, I remember in a gym, we had padding on the walls. We used it for that, right? Anything where you have this sort of repetitive grid system, it just makes so much sense.
I used them one time for ATM a shop panel drawing, where I modeled all the wall panels using the curtain wall.
Yep.
And used different profiles to create the or different panels.
Oh yeah.
For the panels. And it's just unbelievable how you could really fast make different sizes for them.
Yeah, we use them whenever we need to model precast like hollow plank floors when we were doing a dorm. We had a couple dorms we did, and we were just using those because we needed elements, and it's so fast to do. We could use the beam system, but for us it was easier to do the negative, the slicing instead of the center of them and adjusting. But that's here neither here nor there. All right, cool. Well, welcome everyone else who joined us so far. Hey, Chris, how you doing? I think we lost Paul, and he was one of the ones. But actually, Chris, you asked about templates too. But Paul did ask a very specific question about.
I'm still on, but I'm having
okay.
internet connectivity, so I keep bouncing between phone and computer.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I was running around between computer and phone this morning. We had people come taking down a tree like in the middle of 3 meetings, and it was mayhem here. But I was on the phone, on the computer, and the internet was going down. So moving on to templates then. One of the questions that I think Paul you asked after Chris asked sort of a little more generally about the templates is which I thought was cool. A cool concept that I don't think a lot of people know about is how do you manage links within your template. So I think what you were asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is what is when you're bringing in files. So maybe you have an MEP file, a structural file, the truss file you're talking about, whatever it is, right? You have very specific and probably pretty typical files that are coming in, with the obvious being the MEP structure and any consultants. How do you manage those within a template so that things like visibility graphics and filters and all these things that are coming in through a link, how do you manage that in a template so you're not doing those every single time you bring in a new link? Right? Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah, that's correct. Because so I have it all set up in my view template, but then every time I bring the site file in, then I got to go back into each view template and just turn them off real quick.
Yep. So check this out. and this is a really cool tip that I think I might have heard it first from Aaron Mahler, maybe, but either way. So if I was to open up one of a template file, so this is one of my older residential templates, which I still use. I just haven't upgraded. I probably should just upgrade and save it, but it's a 2016 template that I've just been using. And so this is kind of the residential template, but what you do is you create placeholder links. And what's cool about a placeholder link is that it exists within your file. Initially, you have to create a file for it. There doesn't necessarily need to be anything in the file. It's helpful when there is because you can set these things up. But so right now, if this is my template file, if I go to Insert, Manage Links, you can see I've got nothing here. But I have these placeholder files, which are just empty Revit files. If you want to use existing files, you can, but they're just empty Revit files. Oops, where are they? All right, so I made an MEP, site, and structural placeholder links. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to
I don't see your screen right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can't share your screen.
Yep. I saw my screen. It's very confusing when I'm recording over here, but I'm live with you guys. It's so sorry. So I think you guys can see my screen now. Maybe. Let me know. Sweet. Okay. All right. So all I did was I just opened my template file. So I went to File, Open, and I'm inside the RTE file. I mean, this could happen in a regular file too, but so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a 3D view because I can't insert a link when I'm in a drafting view because that's just makes so much sense, right? So I'm going to go to links, and so I have these 3 files. These are just empty files: MEP placeholder, site placeholder, and structural placeholder. So I'm gonna insert all 3 of these. I should probably just go to manage links, it'll be quicker. So I have a site, an MEP, and you can name them however you want. Some people like to put asterisks before it or something so that they always get linked, but it doesn't really make a huge difference. Or they always get pushed to the top or bottom. All right, so these are just empty files. But now that you have a link in here, even if the template can't find those links because they may not exist down the road, what you can do is now you can actually set up right, you can set up your visibility graphics of the links if you want. So if you want to go through custom and, I want to turn off, maybe I want to turn off everything except for, I don't know, maybe duct stuff or something like that. And then maybe I want to have my structural model. I want to have it always be halftone, that kind of stuff, right? Or I can even do filters through links. I mean, you get the idea. So now what you can do is you can actually, these placeholder links have all of your settings built into them, whether it's by view, whether it's by project, etc. And that is built into your template. So then when you start a new project, so now I'm gonna save this template. So remember, this is my RTE file. So I'm just saving this template. And I probably should have renamed it 2020 because now I just upgraded it, but that's okay. It's a separate file. So now when I go to new and I start my project, so now I still have, right, if I go to manage links, I still have these links here. If they were moved, they would say not loaded, but they would still, right, there would still be something there, okay? And all of your settings are still there. Even though the link's not loaded, your settings are still there. So then when I have my real file, all I do is I click this, I use my placeholder, and I reload from. And so I'm reloading from, but all of my settings still remain, okay? So now if I go here, you'll notice the only thing that's showing is ducts and diffusers, and it's halftone or something like that, right? Because remember, I set up those settings through the link, which I just reloaded from. I didn't replace, I didn't remove, I reloaded from. So you're using a placeholder to set up all of your stuff, right? All your filters, all your phasing, whatever the heck you're doing. And then when you get the project, when you start the project, you just replace that placeholder with the real file and all of your stuff. Notice how all of my custom display is all still there. And that was built inside my template. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's great.
Chris, I
Mm-hmm.
can't hear you.
Yeah, that would work perfect, I think.
Can I unmute you, Chris, myself? Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, so that, I think that helps with your question, right, Paul? That was one of the big things there. And the other thing is too, you can transfer project standards, I believe, of linked settings. So if you have an existing project or something like that, I believe you can transfer project settings of some of those things. So if you set up like your template and you're good to go, I think you can transfer them back to an older project or something. You get what I'm saying, I think.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. And then how does it work with a site file with shared location?
I see what you're saying. So I guess it depends. I don't think the location matters. I mean, it obviously doesn't matter for the visibility stuff. But let me take a peek. See, so when I was doing this, we were always linking the same way. We never changed the way we linked. But